Could you tell me a bit about your presentation today, because it's unique amongst the presentations today because it's about one specific client, one specific case, rather than an overall project, isn't it?
That's correct. It's about a gentleman called George who has quite severe communication problems as well as some cognitive problems. As a speech therapist, I was asked to be involved by Don, who's the social worker with the case, and Shireen Woolidge, who's the community matron, to look at whether he was able to make a specific decision around his future living arrangements according to the Mental Capacity Act, and whether he has capacity to do that.
And in terms of how it's worked for your client, George, can you tell me about the benefits there have been for him?
Well, I think the benefit for George in particular is that whereas in the past people who had a lack of communication skills or lack of speech would have been instantly categorised as lacking capacity across the board. What the Mental Capacity Act does is it makes things very decision specific. So we're not looking about whether or not he or she has capacity to manage their finances and their life, or across the board. It's very decision specific, and in this particular case it was whether or not he wanted to go into full-time care, which is what his wife and family were advocating at the time. But of course it's not a question of just picking somebody up from the community and making a placement. It's about that person's best interests, and that involved, because of his lack of speech and limited communication skills, the involvement of a speech therapist.
And in terms of the future for this type of working, I guess you've got the joint working with adult social care and the NHS, and you've also got this specific example with this type of case, I guess.
I think it's a good example of how different disciplines have worked together. So there's been myself and a community matron involved, as well as across agencies with NHS and social services. I think over and above that, though, really is, I think it's just highlighting possible difficulties in applying the Mental Capacity Act to people that have cognitive and communication problems. And I expect probably across the board people will start to find, as it becomes more and more of an issue, that it will highlight some of the issues that we have highlighted in our presentation today.
And in terms of what you expect to get out of the day, you're looking forward to telling people about your experiences and getting some feedback from them, perhaps getting asked questions for areas that you've not covered before?
Absolutely. I think the one thing that this has highlighted, there's no direct approach to this. It's very much an individual approach for each person. And I think equally it highlights the need for a lot of input and joint working. This is not something that can be done alone, and I think although one of the statutory principles is that you assume capacity unless otherwise proved, in this particular instance, and I think in hundreds of other cases that are going to come up, it will involve a huge amount of joint working to ensure that best practice is applied.
And with joint working on this project, has it been an added burden, an extra effort for you guys to work together, or is it just a question of working smarter but using the same resources, same amount of energy to do it?
I don't think it's been difficult insofar as between different professions. I think the difficulty is in trying to find the time, because we both have commitments across the board. When I say both, that includes Shireen as well in the community matron service. I mean, that's one of the things, trying to tie everyone up together to meet. And I think in terms of time spent, it's been, I think, as Lisa will probably explain in the thing later, that it's been about a week's worth of work, really, just on one case. And I think even from that, there's no guarantee that you can get a definitive answer.
And in terms of your caseload, you say sort of 1 week on that one case. How many other cases would you be handling potentially at the same time?
I think it's very difficult to say, because in fact this is an issue that I raise in the presentation, because I work on the community stroke rehab team, and this patient was somebody I had discharged and was referred back to me because I knew him well and knew his communication well, to help assess mental capacity, but it's not a rehabilitation need. And so I think the impact personally for me could be huge, because I've got a waiting list of people that need rehab, whereas the Mental Capacity Act and looking at the mental capacity assessments is not a rehab need. So I think it could have quite huge implications for many professionals, actually, in terms of time and resources and skill and knowledge base as well.
So, absolutely, yeah.
Lovely. Well, thanks for the time.
Okay. Thank you.